There's been many things. I believe I've said it like this before. God will challenge our mind to reveal to us what's in our own hearts.
Wow.
And our understanding, it's not that the Bible's changed, it's our understanding of the Bible is changing. And so, you don't know what people are going to do. I remember when I had started the church up in Sparks in 91, and we were very traditional for years. We Sunday school at 10, church at 11, come back Sunday night at 6, Tuesday night prayer, Wednesday night Bible study. And, everybody pretty well left me alone, because I looked just like everybody else. And I remember, when I felt that God had led us to go to one service, which in Cook County where I lived, that was radical. Nobody was doing that then. Real church people came back on Sunday night, howbeit most all churches only had about a third of the people come back, on Sunday night. But anyway, so I went to one service on 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I announced that one Sunday to the church, and we did it the next Sunday. I mean, I could have literally lost the whole church, but I had 8 people quit coming to my church. I don't even think I was smart enough back then to realize 8 is the number of new beginnings. And so God was leading us. And me, specifically myself, I don't like going to church at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But you go, well, why would God say such a thing? Well, one reason he wanted me to be able to be free to attend other churches.
To speak.
Stuff like that in the mornings. And particularly we went to African-American churches because I felt God calling me to be a multiracial, multicultural church, and which that's what we became, and that's what Grace Point is now. And that allowed me to be able to do that. Not to just sit at my church and pray, and God, please send some African-American people to my church. For me to go out, break the barriers, carry my wife and my 3 kids, and go to African-American church and walk in and not know anybody and just sit there.
Right. So you were 100% white denomination.
Yes.
And then you went to black African-American churches around your community, making relationships with them first.
Right.
And then
that's how it started.
You have probably 50 or 60% biracial. I mean, I know you have even Mexican and other, races in there too. So.
Yeah. And,
and that was a hard step to overcome in
that did
South
cost
Georgia.
me some people. It cost me that issue. I know that's probably not on the docket today, but that issue literally cost me half of my church back when. But we were small. But when you're small, it even hurts worse. So I'd say we was running 80, 90 people. And the issue came up. I raised the issue of race. And I remember I had people, really just getting upset about it. Just a few, but I did have a few. And I had people tell me in my own little congregation, well, I'm not going to go to church with black people. And I said, well, why not? How ungodly is that? And I remember the reply back to me from this person was, well, if we start going to church together. Actually, they said we may have to work with them. We may have to go to school with them, but we doggone won't have to go to church with them. And I said, well, why wouldn't you want to go to church with them, as you say? And they said, if we start going to church together, then we'll marry one another. And we know that's wrong. And I said, where do you get that from?
Right.
So the following Sunday, I preached on Moses marrying the Ethiopian woman. And I literally did that. And because that's why Miriam, Moses' sister, and Aaron, his brother, the Bible says that they were angry with Moses. They were offended at him because of the Ethiopian woman. I don't know if you've been to Ethiopia lately, but that's a dark-skinned nation. And they were upset by that. And, so I just raised that issue. And I held my ground, and I preached it. And I don't mean everybody, they wasn't about 30, 40 people got up and walked out one Sunday, but, people began to trickle out. But it was good. It was good for that body to do that. And then we began to build back, and we became slowly, that multicultural, multiracial, a house for all nations people. That still causes me issues today. I had somebody within 2 weeks ago came to my church, and they didn't tell me that. Nobody's ever brave enough to tell me. But they told one of our members that had invited them, which was white, and they were white. And they told my member, they said that we were too dark for them.
And they weren't talking about having the lights off during worship.
No.
Right.
And, and that hurts my heart. I just don't get it. Maybe I'm weird. I just don't get it. To me, you got to have something going on in your own heart if you can't come and worship. I don't know if people have read their Bibles in Revelation, but when you get to heaven, there's going to be every nation, kindred, and tongue there. So you're not going to lose your ethnicity. God's not going to make everybody white or black or yellow or whatever. You're going to retain your ethnicity in heaven. That's what the Scripture says. And, you got a bunch of people, I guess, think God's going to make everybody white. And it's just ridiculous. And nobody likes to talk about it. If you even bring up race in a church, a lot of times people will be mad just because you bring it up. Because they're like, just leave that alone. Why stir up something? Well, because it's not dead. It reveals the heart of man, and God's not white. We need to get that. And God's not a Christian, and God's not male, and God's not female, and God's not a Baptist, and He's not a Pentecostal. God is a spirit, John 4, and but we just have all these weird views. And we like to make a God in our image that we can relate to, instead of us being transformed by Him and us becoming, in awe of Him and His glory and His majesty. So anyway, I know that wasn't on the paper. I don't think talking about race.
That was not on the paper, but let's go ahead forward with it. Because you walked into an African American church and you were the only white people there.
Yeah.
Tell us about what happened.
Well, I went to a church. I felt like, I had prayed and I had asked God, in prayer, please send African-American people to my church. We want to be multicultural, multiracial church. And frankly, it had not happened. And I don't say that's the whole reason for the 3 o'clock changing, going afternoon services, but I think it was part of it in God's view. And so I had my wife and 3 kids. There was another couple in my church and their daughter that a family, there were 3 of them. So I knew that they had a real heart like I did towards that issue. And so I had shared with this brother that I was going to do that. And he said, I'd like to go. Can I go with you? And so we went to an African-American church there in Sparks and walked in on a Sunday morning and really not knowing what we were doing. And didn't realize the pastor pastored 2 churches. And so that was his Sunday to be at the other church in Valdosta that he pastored. And so at their church, they were just having Sunday school. And so we walked in, took our seat in the sanctuary where that adult class, of course, was being taught by one of the deacons. And he was really taken by 8 white people walking in, and so he tried to continue on with his lesson. And I remember after a few minutes, he just stopped his teaching and said, just, what are y'all doing here? And and of course, I began to just share my heart with him, why we were there. And he started weeping and crying. And of course, that made us weep and cry. And God just melted hearts. And they said they had been really low, emotionally kind of down as people in church. And anyway, it just blessed them for us to be there. And then I remember he became one of my most dearest friends. He's with the Lord now, but Dr. M.J. Robinson was the pastor, and he sought me out the next week, came to my church just during hours, and walked in and said, I wanted to meet this white man that came to my church while I was gone. And we became just friends for years, and we exchanged pulpits, and it's just a real long story. We did things in the community together. He preached in churches that had never had a black man preach in them for our community-wide revivals. We both became part of the ministerial association, and God just, to me, did amazing things with that issue. Didn't cure anything, 100%. That's the heart of man. But man, he sure changed things. And I remember we even did a vacation Bible school at Dr. Robinson's church in the African American community. And I had the First Baptist pastor, First Assembly of God, our church, and his church. We all rented a big tent, and we did vacation Bible school on the grounds at Dr. Robinson's church, and just had a great time, man. Just watching God just melt people's hearts, and and just bring us together. And it has a lot of ramifications for good, I believe. To and you don't have to leave who you are as a person. I mean, and I know there's situations where you have Korean churches because of the language, you have Hispanic churches, and it's not as easy to do that. So I'm not saying every church that doesn't look just like Grace Point, is wrong. I don't believe that, but I want to be true to what God's put in my heart to be, and to do. And that's for all of us to me, when somebody walks in and they can see Hispanics and black and white all worshiping together, to me, it's got to be a little piece of heaven, man. They got to say this. What causes the unity here? And the unity is not because of what we believe. The unity is because of the person in whom we believe in. Right. And that's what brings us together. And to me, that's what's important.